Hello and welcome to hobby vlog number 122. This week has been mostly about MDF kits, though I have made progress on some other projects, so it's a lot about MDF. But what I have also done is behind me on the table I have started playing the game, and let me just move the camera down, Race to Moscow. So you can see there I have it set up and I've been filming this, so it will appear on the channel at some point. And yeah, I've only got the first turn in. Yes, getting a shot. I've only got the first turn in so far. I made a few mistakes, as always, when you're picking up a new game, and I'm going to film at least another turn, and then I'm going to put that out as soon as possible because people are very interested in this game and want to see it. But I can tell you, my first impressions are pretty good. It was good setup, and while I did make the mistakes, that's just because I didn't read the rules clearly enough. So they were entirely my fault. So yeah, I will not ramble anymore. We'll get to the video. I really hope you enjoy it. I hope everyone out there is staying safe. I hope that everyone out there is staying calm, and the horrible situation that's developed in Ukraine and continued through the week has affected me as well, and friends of mine directly. So anyone out there who has any family or friends or anyone who knows is affected by it, you have my heartfelt condolences, and yeah, what a horrible thing. Anyway, there's the unusual politics in these horrible times. I will see you again at the end. Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching. Alright, so it's time for a new project, and I'm going to dig into my Tabletop Scenics white box for the Wild West. And I'm going to build one of these. So I had already taken this out of its shrink when I did the first initial unboxing. This is what I'm going to do. So 108, 1 to 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, 4 of 5, and 5 of 5. So I have everything there. So I will also take these and prime and paint these, but there won't be in a video of those, so they can just go into my 22 minutes. So what I'm going to do is put this away again, and we'll have a look at the sprues, and we'll try to work out what 108 is, so that maybe I can get some instructions, because I reckon I'll be able to download those off of the website. And then when I've got that, we'll have a look at what we've got, and we'll start to put it together. I'm very excited about this. I would very much like to do all of these models as quickly as I possibly can. We shall see. Well, I was correct. I went onto the website, put in WWS 108, and it came to a long list of downloads, which I printed. I've downloaded the one for this one, and I decided to print it two-sided colour because I can, and also put 4 pages to a side so that it wasn't a 28 or 55 page printout. So yeah, you might want to, if you don't have a double-sided printer, then you might want to kind of like shrink them down even more. But yeah, having a double-sided printer, I was able to do that. So I've just stapled it together so I can keep it all nice and neat. And I must say, initial looking at this straight away, these seem like very lovely, clear instructions. Very, very nice instructions. So I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing so far. So what I'm going to do is going to start on step 1, and I will probably try to record the whole of this process, certainly for this first one, show you where parts are, and glue it all together, and just take it a little bit more steadily on this first one. Maybe follow-up videos to this might be less, and have slightly less recording about them. Excuse me, cough. But yeah, so I think the challenge is going to be actually finding the parts. So I've just had a quick flick through. And for step 1, you need this bit, you need this bit, and I believe you need this bit. And looking at the instructions, there isn't actually anywhere where it says which sprue each part is on. So that is one thing that they could improve. Maybe they could say where you find these bits from. But it's relatively obvious. If you look at that shape, you can see that it's that shape. So I'm going to pop those ones out, and then I'll bring you back and we'll do step 1 and maybe step 2 at the same time, which is the base. And I think that looks like it's that part there. So that's on sprue 1. So we're going to be popping out 2 bits from sprue 1 and 2 bits from sprue 2. So yeah, I'll get that done, and I will bring you back when I come to gluing. So I just thought actually that what I will do is I'll show you how I go about popping these out of the sprue, because if you've not done MDF before, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. If they pop out with a slight pressure, then you're laughing. But if they don't, like this one isn't, what you need to do is you need to come along with your knife and push through carefully where you can see that there is a bit of MDF left to keep it in the from falling out. So it is that simple to do. You saw that wasn't very much pressure. And then what you can do is very carefully you can shave off anything left over or anything that's a little bit untidy. I know people that sand and take the burned bit off before they glue. I've never found that to be necessary, but if you find that you're struggling with gluing, then I would maybe suggest that at the very least clean up some of the contact points if you're finding it's not working for you very well where you're putting your PVA. All of this is going to be glued with wood glue, with PVA, yeah, you don't need any super glue for MDF buildings. So I will continue doing this, just very carefully pushing through to release the part from the sprue. You want to make sure that you do, particularly for delicate parts. Make sure that you get all the way through so you're not breaking anything. So I'll get all of these parts extracted and then I'll bring you back for the gluing step. Nearly there. Okay, so that didn't take very long, as I didn't think it would. And what we've ended up with is the parts that we need for steps 1 and 2. The side walls will go on like this. Okay, and then we'll go down the other side. And then I've pulled out the wrong one. That is not the part I want for step 2. So yeah, that was a bit silly. I actually need to have a different part, which I'll go and look for and I'll tell you where it is. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue these two together like this, and then I'm going to get part 2, because part 2 going in will mean that it holds square. But the way to glue these, very, very simply, is I've got a little bit of PVA and I've got a small brush, and what I'm going to do is just come in each of these little areas where the other wall is going to engage, and is where you want to put your PVA. You don't need to put too much. That's about as much as you need. You don't really need much more than that. And then once you've put all your PVA in all of the little areas, you can slot it in place and then leave it. So you can see there, like that. Didn't need to do the bottom one, so I know that for the next time. And that there will now dry really nicely. But of course, as you can see, to make it square, I'm going to need to do step 2. So I'm going to now go look through my parts and see if I can find the bit for step 2. Okay, I found it. It is this part. You can see here we've got the 2 dots, and then the shape matches with that. So yeah, definitely think that they could improve the instructions by saying this is which sprue this part sits on. They don't necessarily have to number or whatever, like some ones do. You don't necessarily have to do that, but knowing which sprue which is on would make a big difference, I think, to make that, so I don't make that sort of mistake. So this one can go back in the pile. I will now pop this out of its sprue and then glue it in place. So I'll get that done and I'll bring you back when I come to the next step, whatever that is. Hopefully that's the only mistake I make on this build, but knowing me, it very much won't be the only mistake I make. There we are, that's popped out. So that is going to make it easier to hold the square. If you see it slots in, let me just move the camera a bit. So it slots in here, which means that when I come to do this one, it will slot in there, and then that will hold everything square and make sure that it's not wobbly or anything, and it'll make it more secure, and that's why I've done those two steps together. So I'll get that glued and bring you back for step 3 later. I better get to work as well. So this is dried nicely, so what I'm doing now is looking at the next step, which is the doors, and I think that I am going to extract the door and separate it now. Before I glue them in place, I'm going to take these doors out, because I might want them open, I might want them shut. I can always glue them in. I might be able to put some hinges in, and I can certainly do with painting them separately. So when I come to finish this, when I actually come to paint it, I can maybe paint these without getting things covered with the texture that I'm going to use on the outside of the walls. So yeah, we'll just quickly cut that out like that, and then this gets slotted in down there. So once again, a little bit of PVA just where it's going to make contact, so on the outside, and on that little, on the bottom where it's going to slot into the base, and then on the other side, and then we'll slide that down in, and that just gives me the flexibility to treat the doors how I want to without them being glued in place and then not able to be removed. So there we are, that's that. So the next step is, and we're going to push this in, we're going to push on a couple of steps here. The next step is to do the roof on top of this, which I've also denied about a little bit. I normally like to have removable roofs, just gives you a little bit more flexibility, but I think in this case it's going to be okay to not have a removable roof for this bit, and I may try to do the main roof removable. But these are the sections that we want to have. They slot on, I believe, like that. So one goes there, and then there'll be another one which I've not yet found. Oh, here it is, another one that will go there. So this is on sprue 1, just down the front. So this is step 4 that we're doing now, and I've got just a couple of minutes, not very long, so I think I'm going to do step 5 as well, which is to stick this whole thing onto, and you can see that one actually needs a little bit of cleaning up. So the next one, so I'll be gluing those on like that. As you can see, one goes on first, and then the other one goes on. They meet. Oh, have I got that wrong? So that's a bit odd. I'm going to dig into the pieces, see if I've cut the wrong one of these, and I'll come back when I've worked out the parts and see if I've made a mistake. I don't see anything else that looks like those roofs, so that's a little bit odd. I'll have a work out which way around they should go, and I'll come back and record when I've worked it out. It didn't take very long at all. So that was there. It just had to be, so they had to swap round to opposite sides, because if you look at it, you've got a short and a long. The long goes on the bottom, the short goes on the top, and then they match up nicely, just like that. So I'll glue those in place. Then the final step is this. So this is the front of the church, and you can see it's this piece because in the picture what we're dealing with, it has the circular window and the windows on the sides, so it's definitely that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that out, and then this whole thing slots on the front, which is pretty cool. So I'll cut that out, glue these on, and then I'll bring you back and we'll have a look at how that looks when it's stuck on, and then we're pretty much going to have to get back to work. So we've only got a few minutes now. So yeah, a little bit more progress. So there we are, this has been cut out. I've cut the middle out as well, and what I now need to do is put glue where it's going to be touching this wood here. And this is why I want to do this in this step, because this is actually impacting the stability of the roof. The roof is going to be held in place by its connection to this front piece of the church. So doing this while they're both still wet and can still be moved is going to make that less likely to break in the future and more likely to slot in more easily. So that's why I make these decisions as to where to break. I try to do it so that if I'm about to do something which is going to potentially leave something that could be wobbly and hard to fit, and glue it in place, and then find later on it won't actually fit, then try and do it all as one. And as you see, that went in very nicely. If you have clamps now and you're a bit worried about that not holding, this is a time when you could come along, you could clamp it in place. I'm not going to bother because I don't think it's going to be a problem. And another little thing is, if you just tidy up those bits of glue that have seeped out, that makes it a bit of an easier painting job, and also that acts to seal the whole thing as well. So there we are, that's steps 4, 5 and 6 done. I've got like I say, I've cut the doors, so that's why we've got a gap here. I want to be able to paint the inside as well, which I might actually have to do relatively soon. Might have to prime and at least to make it a bit easier, because I think once this is joined, it'll be quite hard to get in and paint inside here, so it could look a little bit odd. So I might have to start thinking about how I'm going to work with this, with the different components before I actually finally put them together. So yeah, I have to think about that. I'm not going to do any more now. I'll be back very shortly in your time, but probably a bit later on today mine, to do the next couple of steps and get this front piece completely finished off, and then we'll look and see how the rest of the instructions are for the next steps. Right, so I've got another couple of minutes now, so let's do a little bit more. So the next step, which is step 6, is to take this section here, which you can see, and stick it on underneath there. So this is basically adding the steps for to get up into the church. So I'll pop that out and glue that on, and I think I'm also going to do steps 8 and 9, because I think once I've got that done, I will then be able to analyse and work out whether I want to do any painting at this stage to get any of the interior done, and work out what might need painting of the interior. So I'm not totally sure if I'm going to or not, but yeah, I'll be able to analyse it and work out whether I need to. So that basically slots in under there into these two tabs here. So to glue this, I'm going to need to put some glue here and here, and then just along the inside, and that will do that. So I'll get that done, and then I'll bring it back for step 8 once that's glued. Step 9 is this puppy here, I think. So we're going to pop that out as well, and when that's popped out, I will show you where that is going to be going. I'm enjoying this build. It's not overly simple, as in boring, but it's not so hard that it's boring as well. It's pretty good. So we're going to need to pop out that bit here, and also that section there. Find the tabs, push through, like that, and there's one there. Done. Clean up the edges where we've got a little bit of tear, like so. And then that, I think, I'm not sure. Ah, yes, that goes like that. There we are. Okay, I have to look at that twice. So let's turn it around. So that sits in like that. Okay, so you have a little tab above still, and then I think that some other elements must slot into there. So I think that's right. It's a bit odd. Or is it actually like that? That's better. I had it backwards. So that slots in like that. And there you can see the steps going up. What an umpty. So I'll just glue that in place, and that's where I'm going to stop for now. Well, actually, no, there is one other I can do. It is this little bit here, and that is what sticks in those tabs there. So I'll get this glued in and then show you where that final bit goes in, and then I am going to have to stop and get back to work. So the final simple thing is to stick this step in there. If you haven't got a brush, or if you're doing something where you know you want to cover the whole thing with PVA, the good thing with these bottles is that you can apply it quite neatly without it blobbing everywhere, because you can press this hard up against the bottle, and then it will only let a little bit fall out. And there we have the beginnings of our church, and it's looking rather nice, I think, already. So you've got steps coming up, and you've got some steps going back down inside as well. So I'll let that all dry, and then I'm going to have a think, as I say, about how I'm going to do the next steps, because the next steps start to build walls, and that might make it a little bit hard to get in to this entrance to paint just inside this entrance hall. So that's what I'm thinking about painting, not anything else, just the bit that's going to be hard to get to. So I'll have a think about that over the next couple of hours while I'm working. I've just been umming and ahhing about this, about what I'm going to do about this entrance area, and trying to decide whether I'm going to go nuts and whether I'm going to do the ultimate good, and I am going to do the ultimate awesome. So this means I've brought out my chop it, which I've not had for a while, not used for a while. May end up making use of my new table saw to do this, because this is a bit annoying. But this is a pretty good way of getting all the same length. It's a bit noisy, so yeah. So I've measured the gap on the outside here. That's 2.5, just over 2.5, 25 mil, 2.5 centimeters. So you can see these will fit in really nicely in there. So I'm going to glue these down all on the outside. So I'm just going to cut enough to do the outside, glue them on, and then I'm going to cut enough to do the inside of these walls. And I'm also going to look to put some beams across here, just a beam across, just to hide it a little bit. I'll use a matchstick, but I'll bring you along when I do that. So what I'm going to do is use the chop it to chop up these coffee stirrers, and when I've finished doing that, I will show you how I'm going to go about gluing them on. But I've got quite a lot of this to do, and it's not the nicest sound to have on camera, so I'm just going to crack on with it. I have continued umming and ahhing, and then umming again. And what I've decided to do is the inside, at least, because I don't know yet how I'm going to do the outside or what I'm going to want it to look like, but I do want to have something on the inside so it's not boring plain walls. And this is a wooden part of the building. So these were about 23 millimeters long, I think, something like that, which I've cut using the chop it again, and just using a little bit of PVA glue to secure them in place, and hopefully they'll not warp. PVA can sometimes cause warping of thin wood like this. So yeah, we're just going to basically shove them in like that, line them up, as you see, a little bit of PVA, not too much, and that will hopefully end up looking quite nice. And this will mean I can continue with the rest of the build and the rest of the interior, because I'll be able to get to this easily enough. It's just these side things. I'm probably not even going to bother doing the roof, because the top, because you're just not going to see that. So that will be make work. And this is a gaming piece. So yeah, I'm going to continue doing that, chop a few more, do the other side, leave that to dry, and then I'll get on with the rest of it, which is now going to be building the walls around the side. I will be making sure I do this with a roof that can come off, because I'm making an effort to make this playable internally, so it'd be silly if I didn't. But yeah, I'll get this finished, get all of this panelling done on the inside on both sides, and I'll bring you back for the next step when I get to it. So the next thing to do is the walls, and I have actually managed to break the MDF, taking this apart. You can see here that the one of the uprights has come off, but it doesn't matter. I'll be able to glue it back on. It won't matter in the long run. Fortunately, there's plenty of scope for repair on this one, so I'll show you how I'm going to do that, because breaking bits on MDF kits is just part of the process. Sometimes it's very difficult to avoid. So we have two parts, two walls, and I believe, looking at the diagram, that this is the near side and the other one is the far side. So I will do, you will guess, I will run a bead of PVA, get it on my brush and put it up inside there. So when I join the two together, there's going to be a connection there. And for the broken bit, it's going to be as simple as putting some PVA up here and then just pushing it in place. And then I will glue the other side on, and then I will leave it overnight, because this is going to need to, I think, sit. Though I might check to see whether there's a base to go to sit this on, which will hold it at 90 degrees, as I've mentioned a few times. I do like to do that. Yes, there is. So there's actually some 90-degree corners. So what I'll do is I'll get this other side glued on. I'll find the other pieces. There's some little kind of parts that will hold it at 90 degrees. Aha. Here's one of those, and that slots in underneath and just holds the whole thing square. So I'll get those two popped out, and I'll show you how they go on, and then I'll leave it overnight. Okay, I decided actually to do this side and then do the other side after. So here is the 90-degree thing, and this is going to go underneath. So to make this work, I'm going to put a little bit of PVA just around the edge here, which will go into inside that little gap in the middle, basically. And then we set that down, move some of these old bits of sprue away, and then very carefully come along and set this on top. And that is a really nice solution for making sure you have a 90 degrees. So there we are. That's now sat in nicely. Do need a little bit more glue for my broken bit. Like I say, don't panic if you break things on a PVA kit, on an MDF kit. It fixes so easily with PVA that you shouldn't have an issue, he says, making it look harder than it is because he's clumsy. But yeah, that's an easy enough fix, and it will hold it will make sure it's held at 90 degrees as well. So I will now do the other side, the other wall here, and then leave that. That will be done in the same way. So PVA will slot in there, and then the other 90 degree will sit there to hold it, and then I will let that to go off overnight. In more proof that I make this up as I'm going along, I've actually just realised that I probably should do this last final wall as well, which works in the same way. We have these little 90-degree things which are going to glue on underneath, and then this, dropped the knife on my foot almost, I was careless. This is going to slot in over the top there. So I'm going to get my glue, going to glue that in place, and then it will be 90 degrees, and then that really is the last bit that I'm going to do now, because I think the next thing that I'm going to be building, just looking ahead at the instructions, the next thing I'm actually going to be building is the roof, because the rest of it is adding on the details, which I'm not going to do until after I've finished texturing and painting. So I'm very, very close to done on this, but I do want to, I'm very tired as well, I have a very busy day, so I don't really want to do too much more now. So I'll let this dry, I'll do the roof tomorrow, and then we'll be on to the detailing step, which is pretty good. It's been quite a quick kit to do. I will obviously give my considered opinion on it once I've finished building it, but so far I'm enjoying it. So far it's proving good. So far the instructions are good. So far the actual cut on the kit is good, so I'm not having to make too much effort to get it out the sprue. The damage was caused purely by my own carelessness and not because the sprue was badly cut. I just did it wrong, which happens, obviously. We'll make mistakes sometimes, so I can't blame that on the kit. So yeah, so far so very much good. But yeah, let's get this last bit in, and then go to bed, I think. So slide that down there, and slide that down there. Make sure that lines up. There we are. And then, hopefully, it will slot in, and it does. And we have the outer frame of our church. Alright, so now I'm going to skip a couple of steps, because the next steps that they have in the instructions are all involving putting on the cladding, and I'm not 100% sure whether I'm going to use the cladding or not, and I'm definitely not going to put it on until I've finished and worked out how I'm going to apply any texture. And because you just don't want to do that, it'll be annoying if you did that. You'd find it very hard to paint it on. So making a little bit of noise while I turn the pages. We're going to skip ahead to step 32, which is there, which is all about making the roof. So the roofs, we have a piece here and a piece here, and then on each of these we have 4 of these kind of like cut off triangles. These are the ribs. So what I'm going to do is cut these out and cut the roof out, and then we stick one side on, and then we stick the other side on, and then you have a roof. And it really is that simple. So I'll get everything cut out now, and then bring you back for the gluing, and then we're going to move on to the final assembly step, which is for the tower, and I'm going to crack on with that as well now, so that I can then move on to the bit that I always enjoy the most, which is painting and tidying and, you know, adding on the details is always the fun. I've obviously started that a little bit with some of that wooden cladding on the inside of the entrance. There's going to be a lot of that coming on, I think. A lot of snipping of the coffee stirrers. But yeah, let's get this roof made, and then we can move on to the tower. Okay, so I've done that. Wasn't too hard. Got the 2 roof sections, and I've got the 4 spars or ridge things. So what I'm going to do is attach them to like this to the bottom of each of these roof sections. Now the pictures show you putting the roof down on top of these, and that's going to be incredibly annoying and not very easy to do. So instead I'm going to assemble it from the bottom. So apply a little bit of PVA to your strut or spar, whatever you want to call it, and slide it in place, and you can see that that is far easier than attempting, especially with the overlap, attempting to drop it down, stand these up in the right place. Yeah, that would just be irritating. So it doesn't actually matter which side you do, which side you glue. You think it does, but it doesn't, because they are identical. One side is the same as the other. So you can just add your white glue and then slot them in place like that. Once I've done all of this side, I'll do the other side. So I'll get these all glued in. There we are. So the easy way to do this, and it doesn't necessarily always work, but the easy way to do this is, once again, to keep it upside down, because you're not having to kind of like juggle too much. And actually what I should have done is put the glue on this on both places before I put it in. So put the glue on the where it's going to stick to the other roof section as well. So yeah, you'd find it easier to do this. I could pull them out, but then I need to apply glue to both sides again. So yeah, apply your glue to both contact points, both the first roof and the second. And then what you can do is, hopefully, carefully line everything up, and it should work. My arm is right in the way. Right, I'm going to get this done, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished, because it's going to be a bit difficult to film. Okay, that was a bit fiddly, but basically worked how I said it would. I think the only thing to add is, as you can see, I've put some clips in to hold, and that made a big difference. So I could get 1 and 2 in quite easily how I was trying it, but the 3rd and the 4th were not working. So what I then did was I put the first one in, clamped it on one side, and then I was able to manoeuvre the other ones in, clamp this end, and then funny enough the bottom one had come loose a little bit, so I then did the same thing. I put one end in, and then I was able to manoeuvre and put the other end in. And 4 clamps there are going to be enough to hold that in place and let that dry. So that's done. So a little bit fiddly, but not too terrible. It probably took me a couple of minutes after I turned the camera off to get that right and get it nailed in. So I'll let that to set, and what we'll now do is we'll have a look and see how we're going to put together the tower. So I was going to do a little bit more fill around the bottom of these rocks that I've glued in place, but I've looked at it and decided against it. So what I'm going to do instead is come along with my chocolate brown and dry brush. I'm probably going to need to come in with a smaller brush to get in underneath the rocks, but I'm just going to dry brush this brown over pretty much all of the horizontal surface, just to kind of make it look a little bit like there's some dirt there. But I don't want to brush it over it all, because I'm also going to come in with different colours, greys and blues and what have you, because I want this to look like a rocky outcropping. And the reason why I've left these without fill is I want it to look like they're maybe relatively new, because they do look like freshly broken rocks, and so I think bedding them in may be a little bit wrong. So yeah, there we are. That was a very quick process doing that, and that has now brought that up really, really nicely. If I zoom that in a little bit better, just that super quick dry brush makes such a big difference. So the next thing I'm going to do is come along with some different colours and dry brush those on, but I'm going to wait for the brown to dry completely, so that'll be left for a little bit longer, and after that I can start to do flocks and grass and flowers and wood and other deadfall, and then also try to get the stream in. So this is going to rush to a completion now. This is now into the final stretch. Now that dry brushing is dried, I'm going to make use of these two colours here, so like a cream and this nice rich orange, and I'm going to be looking at applying that to the rock face. Now, I'm not going to do this so much as a dry brush as a heavy overbrush, and I'm going to come in with the lighter colour first and pick out most of the higher areas that I want to have coloured like this, and then I'm going to come along after that with the orange and do a bit more of a dry brushy type application with the orange once this is dried, and then I'll come back with this cream and tie it all together with some more dry brushing. I'm also going to put a little bit of this cream along the track of where I want the stream to be, which comes along here and comes down, and that will then get built up later with more colours. But yeah, the idea is to mirror this to the shades and textures you can see on the rocks that I've glued in place. So I'm trying to tie the whole together. So that's a nice application of that cream. Let that dry, and then we'll come along with the orange and dry brush over. So we'll be back to that in a couple of minutes when it's dried. Okay, so it's been a couple of minutes, not very long, and that is now dry enough for me to come along and put on some orange in places. I might apply it a bit more thickly than that, but I don't want to put too much on. I might put a slap on over here and a slap on there. There we are. So just going to make it look a little bit more interesting. Rocks aren't grey. These rocks are orange and white. So there we are, that's that. So next thing I'm going to do is start to look at the flock and grass, which is going to be on either side here and a little bit at the top. It's not going to be everywhere, it's going to be quite a sparse one. I'm not going to go as crazy as I've done on the other ones in this series. This is going to be just a little bit more rocky, a little bit more kind of like barren, with maybe grasses around where the stream is falling and then the waterfall. So I'll do the grasses and then the waterfall will be the last thing. I'll bring it on when I get to it. But now we're going to argue about the actual base I'm going to do for Rahki Ahmbo and his Mrs. Doll Orbz. Thank you for the name, my friend on Instagram. And what I'm going to do is this. I've done some sketching, I've done a little bit of cutting to just get plans. But what I'm going to have is I'm going to have steps coming down here. I'm going to have Rahki stood here on the end and Dolores on the top, and then I'll have clouds and what have you, so it'll be obvious, telling the story that he's left her behind somehow. I'm not going to go too deep into the backstory because I don't want to spoil it, but that's the idea. So I've done a rough sketch on this. This is going to be the base, and then I've roughly transferred that shape onto this bit of blue XPS. What I'm going to do now is just use a sharp knife to cut that out, and then I will make use of the other scraps I've got to do the steps, which are going to be kind of coming around like this, and then the platform will be at the top, and I may even have the platform so the steps kind of like lead up to the final step, going back from all angles. So yeah, get that done, a little bit of cutting. I'll do this first one on camera, I'll do the rest off camera because it'll just be the same repeated action. So get a sharp blade when you want to cut blue foam, and make sure that in this case I'm not using a safety ruler because I'm freehanding it. But normally I would say always use a safety ruler, especially if you're doing straight cuts, get yourself a safety ruler. But in this case I'm keeping my other hand far away from the blade, and I'm doing multiple shallow draws rather than trying to do it in one go, which means there's less likelihood of there being a sudden kind of parting of the waves and the blade shooting across and hurting me.
So that's how you cut blue foam if you can't use a safety ruler, but you should always try to use a safety ruler if at all possible. So what I've done here is cut that, so I'm now left with a straight edge, and I can grab my safety ruler, of which I have many, but this one is currently my favourite. And you can see that I'm going to be able to keep my hand well safe, well out of line, and cut that straight. So there we are, that's the first cut. So I'm going to keep doing that technique, which will involve cutting the curve and then cutting a straight line, and that will then build up this stepped kind of like affair, and then I can paint it and finish it. It's not going to take very long, I don't think. It's going to be a really nice looking thing though. Just going to be using XPS. I'm not going to use any other materials for the base. So yeah, so I'll get that done and I'll bring you back. I'll show you what it looks like when I come to glue it. So there we have it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue the steps only together. I'm going to glue them at the back, I'm going to glue them at the front. And the reason for that is I'm going to use my 90 degrees here, and I'm going to make that a true 90 degrees like so, and then glue it together at the back with just dots and dabs of my super grabby glue. And when that's gone off, I'm going to be able to come along with the hot wire cutter and trim one side 90 degrees and one side as so that it's flat, because then I'm going to actually clad that with cardboard or with paper or something, because I want it to be smooth. I don't want it to have any lines, and even with the application of like a grout or whatever, you'll always see the lines. So I'm actually going to put something over the front of that. So that's what I'm going to do. So I won't do all of this on camera because we're a bit dull, but what we'll do is we'll get a little bit of glue, put it on and press it in like that. There we are, that's grabbed. You can see it grabs really nicely. Then we'll make sure that that stays at 90 degrees, and I'll keep doing that for each of the layers. And when that's done, that will be really secure, and I'll be able to then straighten up the curve and straighten up the 90 degrees, and then I will be able to stick it down to the actual base. So I'll get that done, and I'll bring you along when I come to the hot wire cutting. Well, as it happened, I didn't actually have to do the hot wire because I managed to get it really well lined up, and that's smooth enough for me. So what I'm going to do now is glue it down to the base using the same glue, making sure to get that nice and straight. And then again, I've decided I'm not going to try to cut card. I'm actually going to use a thin skim of modelling compound. So I'll put the modelling compound on and then I'll polish it really, really finely. And that will be along the edge of this. And then also along the sides, because I want this to be a really nicely finished piece. So yeah, I'll get that glued in place and then bring you back when I come to do the modelling compound. So here we have the Sarissa stagecoach, armoured stagecoach, based on the Wagon. Now it's an awesome film. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend that you watch it. Angela bought it me for Christmas a couple of years back and I loved it. And then I saw this, actually, funny enough, on an advertising thing that they put in with another order, and so I bought it. It's been sat in my stash for ages, along with these cart horses from Trent Miniatures. And the idea what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this and paint these up. Now this is partially for a little challenge. I've joined a new Discord, and really good fun Discord for Western style games, and this will be quite good for for some of the Western games that I'm starting to get. I'm currently waiting to receive a bunch of Gunfighters Ball stuff, and you'll know from other videos that I've been putting together some other kits for Western, that's why. But I also really want to do a diorama of the scene in the film where this is splashing through the river, so always approaching the river. Whether I do it splashing through or not, I'm not sure. So I need to do this. This video and this build is going to only be the stagecoach and the horses. It's not going to have anything else around it. I really need to work out how I'm going to do this so that I can potentially put this into the diorama. So it will be on a base that I'll be able to lift out. I'll then be able to use it in the game, and I'll also be able to put it into the diorama, so that will kind of like be a display piece for this. So anyway, I'm going to put this together, going to clean these up and paint these, and then most of the effort will be putting this together and doing the base. The painting of these will be very simple. And yeah, really quite looking forward to it. It's been in the stash for ages, like I say, so it's nice to kind of make a start on it. I mixed myself up some modelling compound. This is stuck on firmly, so what I'm now going to do, like I say, is come along and put modelling compound as smoothly as I can on these sides so that we don't have any steps or any lines. Now, you want the modelling compound to be mixed really well, so I've mixed this a little bit better than I normally do. I'm normally a bit lazy when it comes to mixing the compound. And to get this very smooth is a multi-step process. You're not going to get it smooth first time, or straight away I mean. You do need to get it smooth first time. I suppose you could sand it, but I'm not a big fan of sanding. So what we're going to do is apply a small amount across this end, and then once we've got a small amount on, we'll let it dry a little bit, and then we'll come along and smooth it off. And that's technique. It's not very complicated, but yeah, don't expect to get it totally smooth when you're applying it the first time, because it needs to be a little bit drier to get a good finish. As you're seeing, that was me trying to make it smooth and it didn't work. So I'm just going to crack on with this. I'll get everything applied, put some music on, and then I'll get to polishing it, and then you'll see the results. And hopefully the results will be good. Well then, let's have a look at this war wagon. I've just taken the plastic off, but that's all I've done, so I've not really even looked at the instructions. But I've got my sharp knife, I've got PVA on a plate here, and I've got a brush to apply the PVA with. So this is slightly different from the TTCombat ones that I'm doing at the moment, whereby they actually label everything. Glue the steering pin A into the carriage base B. So this is the carriage base, easy for me to say, and this is the steering pin. Look there, A and B. So what I'm going to do is pop them out and glue them in. You can see some of the parts already came out of the sprue. That there, I believe, is a spare. These are actually parts I care about. So yeah, they were loose and they fell out when I actually opened the packet, which is always a little bit of a shame, but as long as they're not broken, it doesn't matter. It does show that potentially the cutting out of this has been quite well done. If they're falling out just like that, that means that the laser cut has done well. So that came out very easily. That is the carriage base. And then we'll get the steering pin, which is here, and we'll glue it together. There we are. So I think that glues in there. That looks right, doesn't it? So actually on this one, I'm just going to dip it in. That's going to be the easiest way for me to do this. And then glue it in there. And push it flush. And we're done. So that's the first part done. Excellent. There we are. So the next thing is glue the chassis C onto the pin. So the chassis, okay. The chassis is the thing that fell out. Nope, the chassis is this. So actually, you need to push that right through. Ah, it's a good thing I checked. That needs to go right through from the top. There we are. Almost made a mistake already. Teach me not to read the instructions. So this is the chassis at the bottom. So I'm going to split that out from its sprue and glue that on to the bottom. There we are. So I will get my brush, put some glue around that to make that dry properly, and then a little bit of glue around the base of the pin, because yeah, like that. And then this goes on underneath, flush, I think, one would hope. There we are. So I think that's right. So I'm going to have a quick look at the instructions, and I'll be back in a second to do the next step. Okay, after quite some staring, I think I've worked out what's going on here, and hopefully I'm right. So it would be really good if they would have a peel of paper in here that would actually label the sprue, because they talk about A, B, C, D, E, and what it says is take two steering plate D and steering mount E on the steering pin, and then if you have a look at the instructions, there's just loads and loads and loads of circles for down here. So what I'm trying to do is this step here. And I think I've worked it out. Like I said, I think that I know which ones these are, and I think that what I need is this tiny one here and this one here. You can see that there is actually a slightly miscut. It's not circular at all there, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that, whether I might use that now, because the other one of this same size is going to, I think, go on top of the turret, which is also a shame. Yeah, I'm going to guess it's going to be this one, and I think I'm going to use the misshapen one for the other section, for the other for this other steering one. So I'll pop those out. That did take quite a lot of staring and thinking, to be honest. That was a good few minutes I was off camera. Be glad I turned the camera off. And this one is actually also inside the steering yoke, which is why I identified it, because I think that is actually how we do the steering. But yeah, hopefully I'll get to that. So anyway, let's pop that through. Done. Put that to one side, and then I believe the large one goes on first and the small one goes on second. So what we're going to do is put the large one on here and then the small one on, and then that is nearly the chassis done. There is just the top of the actual wagon to put on this, so the ribs and the spine. So let's do that. So I know what to do with that ones. We've got a spine here, and we've got 1, 2, 3 ribs here. So I'm going to pop them out, and then I'll show you how we're going to glue them together. Okay, so here we have the rib, and here we have the spines, and the way this works is that they slot in like that. The two ones that are identical go there. The one with the highest nub or whatever goes here. The one with the low nub goes next, and then the narrow one goes in from on top here. So that's how that works. So I'll get that glued together, and then what we'll do is we will then attach that to the actual base that we've just been assembling before, and that then will basically be this done. And I'll probably stop there for the time being, certainly until this is dried, because then we're going to be looking at actually assembling the sides of the wagon, which needs this to be set and secure before I'm starting to bend paper. Oh, put that one on wrong. There it is, because I'm talking and not paying attention. I've got the first one in the correct one. High nub, low nub, then narrow. There we are. So yeah, so we'll get that done, glued together, and then the final thing is it slots in, and you can see that there are little kind of spaces for it to accept it down each side. So what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of PVA in each of those, like so. Now, some people do use super glue. They are barbarians. You don't need to use super glue. If you're in a rush, I'm joking. If you're in a rush, super glue is good, and I have used it before. I'm joking. Do what you want. But yeah, I always use PVA unless I'm in a huge rush, or if I need something which is actually going to collapse or fall apart, and I need to have the like just a quick grab. But what I'll probably do, and you can see that this might not be a bad time for it actually with this, but what I normally do if I do use super glue is I will then come along and add the PVA afterwards, and the reason for that is the PVA gives it a stronger bond. Maybe not as much of an instant bond, but certainly a stronger, more long-lasting bond. However, in this case, we are maybe seeing, having said don't use super glue, a time for super glue, because I am way too clumsy to do this right, and I keep on making mistakes. So this is either a time for super glue or a time to glue the ribs, not try to fit them straight away into the base. But of course, now I've started, I'm stubborn, so I'm going to keep trying. So let's see if I can get this right this time. Also a time maybe to have clamps to hand. Let's see if this will help. Doesn't always help that, because sometimes it pings. There we are, it did it. It helped. Clamp to the rescue. Right, I'm going to let that dry. Hands away, step back slowly. So the next step on these chairs is very simple, and it is literally only 2 steps that I do, so we're nearly done. And this is Model Air Mahogany from Vallejo. That's the colour. I'll try to remember to put the details of that on the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint over everything I've painted already. Now you may wonder why I even bothered putting the wood base on underneath, but it does make a difference. It does make a little difference in how this looks, and it's worth doing that as an extra step. But the key here is what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint everything, but I'm not going to paint the back, because the back is the inlay, the back is the inset, and so I don't paint this and this with the mahogany, but I paint everything else, and that's it. It really isn't very hard, and it comes out looking like a really, really cool little chair. Just be careful, you're a little bit more accurate than I was just then. I might need to touch that up with some more of the wood. But yeah, it just makes it look really nice, really interesting look. I do 2 coats, so I'll paint this on this one and then do the other 3, and then tomorrow probably I will paint them again with the same colour just to get a nice even coat. It is designed to be used with an airbrush, but regular viewers will know just how much I've failed at using an airbrush. Maybe one of these days I'll get back to it, but today is not that day, as Aragorn would say, but not this day. Anyway, enough rambling, enough wittering. I'm going to apply this over the whole thing in a thin coat, and then tomorrow I'll apply it again in a thin coat, and that'll be done. And we're nearly finished painting up everything then for the Orbz diorama, and then I can finally start putting it together, which I'm quite excited about. So yeah, let's just get these painted up. Now I'll show you what they look like when we come to actually put them on the diorama, because yeah, basically this is it. Nothing more to add. The next thing to build on this is the tower, which starts at step 38 here. So we're going to get a base, and you can see got quite messy. There's the base, and then we're going to get these kind of slatted sides, and these slatted sides are scattered over all the sprues. There's a couple here, there's one here, and there's quite a few on this sprue as well. So I'm going to extract these from the base and then glue them on, and then we put on the top of that, I think it is going to be that piece there. So what I'll do is I will do steps 38 and 39 and then bring you back once I've done that, show what it looks like, but I'll just get those popped out and then get them glued on. Well, that was quite an interesting process, but I managed to do it. How I did it, I'm not going to take it apart now because that was really fiddly. How I did it was I put these side pieces in and tilted them out so they were leaning outwards. And then I got the upper ring and I engaged it on one, and then holding with one, I then flicked each of the others in and it worked. So it was a really fiddly process, but if you do that, it's not so bad. So the next thing that I need to do, and I'm going to do this now as well, and then I'm going to have to get to work, is there's a whole bunch of these shapes here, which you can see there, if that will focus, yes it will. So I need to pop all of these shapes out, and then these will slot in here, in that gap, and then into that little notch there. And that then will complete this first part of the tower. So I'm going to go along, pop all these out. There's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. I'll glue them in, let them dry, and then I'll bring you back. I won't come back after that. I'll bring you back after that's all dry and when I'm doing the next step. So the next step is to start building up this tower, so the spire part of the tower, and this is going to be dramatically difficult. So I think most of this I'm going to do off camera. I've just been doing a little bit of like fiddling around and working out how it might work, and I think I've got a way of doing it. No, but we shall see. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. So what I'm going to try to do is glue these little kind of like hexagonal rings, and they need to be glued to these uprights. However, yeah, trying to make them actually stay is not going to be easy. So my plan is a little bit of PVA and to work my way up and to use the little clamps to hold them in place. So get that in there, bit of fluff on that one. So get that in there with some glue and then clamp it in place and make sure that is square and not skew-if like it was there, and that there will now hopefully dry in place. And I've done a little bit of testing and I can actually get this next one in as well and actually fit a clamp in the gap like that, and then it will need a little bit of like shifting and fiddling to make sure it's square. It's not very easy this, but that's now square and clamped ish. And then I'm going to move on and I'm going to do the other two, and then I will probably not be able to do the other side, which is going to slot on like this, until I've finished clamping all of these in place. So, and maybe even after they're even mostly dry, because what it suggests you do is you do one side, then you do this side, then you do the alternative sides, and then as I get these actually glued in place, it will become more stable and easier to do, but it's just going to be a bit fiddly. So that's my plan. If it works, well, it works. If it doesn't, then I'll bring it back and we'll have a look at another go. Well, that was incredibly fiddly and prompted a couple of swear words, but I've managed to get the top and the bottom glued in, which I'm very pleased with. So I haven't ended up using the clamps. They were useful, but they ended up kind of like springing off at the worst possible time. So if I had slightly smaller clamps, maybe those ones that some people have which are twisted, which you twist a little kind of like knurled knob and it clamps in. I can't remember what, I think there might be even for dentists. Then that might help. But with these clamps, as small as they are, they're just too big. They're just spanged off too many times. So patience and stubbornness, and I think it's right. So I'm going to leave that to dry now, and then the next thing we'll be putting on the side ones, and then we'll be putting on the other four, and then that'll be done. But that is really fiddly. So I waited for the opposing sides to dry, and then I suddenly found, and I didn't have the camera on, but I was on a roll, so I've just done it. I suddenly found that I could do the rest, and I could also get the top in. So what I'm now about to do is stick this base to the bottom of this tower. So a little bit of PVA just dabbed here, because as it happens, the bottom projections will actually go all the way through this. So I can't just push it in and sit it flat on the bench. I need to actually go, as you can see, they project through. So that is very nearly done now. I think the next thing, which I'm going to do straight away, is these projections here will slot in there. So I will get some more PVA, and then we're pretty much done, which is pretty cool. This has been a relatively easy build. There's a couple of fiddly bits, but so far the instructions have been pretty good. The probably better than the Sarissa ones. I'm a big Sarissa fan, but I think these instructions are better than Sarissa's. So what we'll do is, there we are, that's it, that's in. So now we have the tower, and the last thing on this tower is to put the cross on, which is here, and I believe the other section is that section there that's in the middle. So that section there is going to go on top, and then the cross will go through the middle and down into there. So I'll get these two items split off of the sprues, and then get them glued in, and then show you what it looks like. Right, so that's done. So now for the absolute last steps before I start on the prettification and texturing and all that. We have to build the sides for where the tower will sit on top of the roof. That is these pieces. So I've got two of these pieces, and they will go in underneath this platform. So we'll glue those on opposite sides, and hopefully I don't trash it by working too fast, but I'm enjoying this so much, I just want to get it done. So they go in, tell you what, I'll do it right, shall I? They go in like that, and like that, with the kind of lines on the outside. And then we have these two here, which are going to slot in underneath, in that gap there, and that is where it actually sits on the roof. So I might let that dry just for 10 minutes, just so that it's got enough tack, and then I'll come in and slot these on. I think in hindsight and retrospect, what the instructions should have you do is build this first, separate from that, and then you'll be able to turn this upside down, and it'll be much easier. So if we were to pull, I might even, that's already got a tack, alright, it's already tacked. So if I was able to turn this upside down, this would be much easier to do this step. So that's maybe a little bit of a weakness in the instructions. You should build this platform first and then join the two larger substructures together, but I'll be able to do it, it'll be fine. I'll let that to tack up a little bit more, and then we'll put these two ones in place, and then it'll be a case of construction complete, let's start texturing. I left this a day. As you can see, I used a couple of clamps just to make sure that that went in nicely, and it did. So what I'm now going to do is the cardboard. So the next steps, which is steps 5 to 9, involve cutting these cardboard pieces out and wrapping them around this frame, basically. So first of all we're going to get part F, which is the front, which is that. So we're going to cut that part out. Then again, cardboard is just a little bit easier to remove than MDF, but you're basically doing the same thing, where you're looking to cut those little areas where it's still attached. And with cardboard, what you want to be doing is making sure to score where you're going to fold. Now these are partially pre-scored, but you still want to score it a bit. And I am actually just going to quickly grab myself a short ruler, because having a ruler to bend against will also help. It helps to give the bend, keep it straight, and mean that you don't actually cause damage. So I'm going to just score a little bit more than that. So let me just get that done. There we are. So you can see now that that is now going to bend and not cause us a problem. So I'll do the same on the other side. There we are. So that's the front part. And the front part folds on around, well, the front. So like that. That's better. There we are. So they slot in like that. So what we're going to do is going to glue that in place with a little bit of PVA, and then we will have a look at the sides. So I'll get some PVA and a brush, and we will apply PVA just at these contact points. PVA really is the tool to use when you're putting an MDF kit together. Super glue is good. I think I've said already, it sometimes can give you not just quite enough working time to get this right. So a little brush of PVA in, and then get that through the hole correctly there, and that through the hole correctly there, and that now will, when it's dried, will be quite secure. So the next thing is to put the sides on, and the sides is this and this. So I'll get those cut out and scored, and then bring it back when I'm about to glue them. But I might just quickly clamp this with one of these compression clamps, and then leave that to dry a bit before I do the next stage. I don't have very much time now. Oh, I have just noticed actually I had missed something. I need to put some glue at the bottom here as well, because actually what it should be doing is wrapping all the way around and gluing in with that little notch there. So I'm going to get that done, get it clamped, leave that to dry, and I'll bring it back when I get to the next step, which will be putting the sides on. But I'm going to have this front completely dry before I do that. So let's just get that done. So this is one area where sometimes Sarissa's instructions are a little weak, because they're not as clear as they could be. They're not as, like, you can't read them as well as maybe you want to, because they're quite small pictures, so it's very easy to miss that kind of detail. But fortunately I didn't miss it. So that slots on like that, and it needs to wrap all the way around. So if we start from there and go all the way around, it's a good thing I was going to clamp that, because I might have missed that if I hadn't run the clamp in. And then we can clamp it there gently, and that can be clamped at the top as well, gently, and then I'll leave it to dry. That was a far longer, more difficult process than I expected it to be, but I'm pretty happy I didn't make a silly mistake and end up regretting it, because one of the things with cardboard is it's very hard to undo once you've made a mistake at this point. So there we are, leave that to go off. That was a bit fiddly. Right then, so that front piece is glued on quite successfully, quite pleased with that. So I've now cut out and done the scoring and the folding for the side bits, and I will do this off camera because it's a bit fiddly, but basically what you're going to be doing is attaching this here, wrapping it round, and you can see that it kind of like tucks in, and then the other side works the same. Actually, I've got that backwards. So apologies. This is the front side here, so it wraps round and it goes into those little kind of like the tabs there, and then this will continue wrapping on round and all the way around to the front. So I'll get that glued in place with PVA, and then I'll bring you back for the next step to show you what it is, which is basically going to be this section here, which will wrap around the front here. And finally, the last bits are these two, which will go on the roof. So when I've got that all done, I will I'll come back and I'll show you what the next steps will be. So once I've finished gluing all this on, I'm just going to do this without filming from now on, just do the rest of the cardboard work. I'll bring you back and we'll have a look at the actual turret, which is the next step. So I'll get these all glued in place, be back shortly. Right, so you can see that the actual carriage is coming on nicely. Done all of the cardboard work and put where the turret will rotate around. And talking about the turret, that's the next thing to do. So I have clipped out lots and lots of parts like that will all go together to make the turret, and then finally the top of the turret is going to be this bit of cardboard. So this is this quite complicated stack that's going to go on. So for example, you start with that, then we slot that in like that, then you get that goes over the top, and then you get one of these, and then one of these, and then one of these. So it's quite a complicated stack of, and I'm going to do it off camera because it's going to be a lot of gluing, but ultimately this is the order it goes in. I think it goes like that, then like that, then like that, then like that, then like that, and finally like that. And then this, which is the barrel, will go in at that level. So that's how it goes together. I'm going to glue that all in now, get that stuck, and then that will sit on top, as I say, so you can kind of see how it's going to work. That's going to sit on top and be able to rotate around the that little kind of like area there. It's quite a clever little design. I'll get that glued up, and then the final thing is going to be fitting the front axle and putting the wheels on. So yeah, pretty pleased with how this is going. It's looking quite good at the moment. Right then, so we get to it. This is the final bit of this build, which is sticking the wheels on and the steering. So I've just kind of latched it on very temporarily. What I'm going to do is stick the small wheels to the front, like this, and the big wheels go on the back. And then when that's dried, I've put way too much glue on there, never mind. When that's dried, what you do is this sits on here, and then I will actually use super glue. I'll put a little dab of super glue right in the middle, and then we have this cap which goes in the middle there. Now I think maybe I haven't pushed that down far enough through, because I would have expected that tab to go through the centre of this. So as I say, I'm just going to use some super glue, and that then will sit as a ring, and you can see it's bigger, and so this will still be able to turn, which is pretty cool. That's quite a cool little touch. But the first thing is get these wheels glued in, let them dry, and then when they've dried I will then do that last bit, and then the coach is done. And you can see on my fingers that I have grey primer all over them, and that's because I've just been priming up the horses. So I've got all 10 horses now cleaned up and primed. They're ready to start painting, so I'll just paint them very quickly. Like I've said, they're not going to appear on the camera, but I have made progress on them. So yeah, we're pretty much there on this. I need to work out how I'm going to paint it. Probably use a thin wash of steel from Vallejo, and that'll probably just do it. I don't want to put too much on, but yeah, that's been a really fun build. A little bit fiddly in places, but pretty cool, pretty fun. Really happy with it. Very happy that I ended up getting it. I'm really keen actually maybe to go and watch the film again. So yeah, there we are. So the final thing will be sticking the steerage and putting that pin so that it can rotate and not fall off, and that's done. Okay, so that's all dry now, and I've mixed up some black grout, and I'm going to paint the black grout all over everything, all over the sides, all over the steps, and just seal the whole thing with this black grout. Now if you're not sure how I make my grout mix, there is a link at the bottom of every single one of my videos actually, which shows how I do it, and I will attempt to remember to put a link here as well, but you can always find it in the description of every single one of my videos. So I'm just going to get this done, get this all painted up, dry pretty quickly, and then if there's any colour showing through, I will either, if I've got any grout mix left, I'll come and do a second application, or I'll use black paint to finish it off. Of course, this is really not going to end up being black, but this is just a sealing and an undercoat, and filling in the gaps at the bottom of the stairs and that sort of thing, so between the steps, and just making sure that we have a consistent texture over the whole thing, which is what I want for this build. So yeah, not going to take long, as you can see. In the time I've been muttering, I've nearly finished the first application. One thing to point out as well is if you mix up too much grout and you've got another project that you can use it on coming up, which I do, then chuck the grout into a fridge with a little bit of saran wrap or cling film over the top, and that will stop it going off for a couple of days. It doesn't last forever, but it does last for a bit if you put it in a fridge. So there's a little bit of a top tip so you don't waste material if you accidentally mix up too much, like it looks like I have. Easily done. Right, get that finished, and we'll see if I need to do any covering up of any gaps, and I'll let you know. But yeah, it's going on really nicely. Very, very pleased with how that's going on actually. It's a nice thick mix this time. Managed to nail it. I've been staring at some pictures and trying to decide how I'm going to do this, if I'm going to spend a long time applying texture like clipped out coffee stirrers. And I've been looking at pictures of these churches in the cowboy time in the Midwest, and I just don't think I'm gonna, because looking at it I should be able to get this looking quite nice just with paint. So the first thing that I'm going to do is what you see I'm doing here now. This is MDF quick clear sealant, which I happen to have, and I've had it open for ages, and I'm a little bit worried about it going off. So I thought, you know what, let's just use it. I have multiple tins of this stuff. If you don't have this, do not worry. You can absolutely use PVA. It works pretty much the same. Well, it does work the same. All you're looking at doing here is sealing it so that when you apply your paint, it doesn't soak in. And so you don't have to do like 18 coats, because MDF is very, very thirsty. So I'm going to apply that over, leave it to dry, and then from what I can see, the colour of this is probably going to be quite light, like a white, lightish grey, very old looking wood. Now I am a little bit aware that that could be just what it looks like now after, 100 years. So I might do it looking a little bit younger, with a little bit less aged wood. But basically I'm going to paint the whole thing in wood, and I'm going to do some simple kind of like roof. I'm going to do very simply with a with some battens, so like a shingle roof, and I think that should do it. It's going to be quite a simple paint job. I don't want to go too overboard. I can sometimes go into the weeds on these sorts of builds, and then I end up losing momentum just because I'm spending so much time on things that don't actually matter. So I'm going to just paint over the whole of this in a coat of this sealant, let that dry, and I'll bring it back when I come to the actual painting of the colours, show you what paints I'm going to use. But hopefully that will end up looking quite nice. You can see it's quite quick to paint on. It actually does dry quite quickly as well. And it does dry clear. So I'll keep doing that. And the other thing I'm thinking about is how to cope with the doors. I want them to be openable and shuttable. I might just have them, I might glue a little kind of base on the back, and then I better put them in and pull them out so they'll be shut or not there. That's probably the simplest and quickest thing, which is probably what I'll end up doing. But anyway, a couple of things to decide. First of all, let's get this all sealed. Now, I don't always film everything that I do, and this is a case where that's going to be happening now. I have a stack of these south of the border from Sarissa. I've already made a bunch of these. I already have videos of them, so I'm just going to make them and not film them. So that's just something to add to there. We'll appear 4 more of these done. I might take pictures of them and add them in the vlog, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build up some of these little bits of scatter terrain. These are from Blotz, which is a new company that I've not built for before. I had them very highly recommended, and I've had them for a while, and now I'm going to do it. So we've got some hitching posts, we've got an upright piano, we've got a toilet, some church furniture and some school furniture, and these will all work very, very well with the Western project that I've got going on at the moment. The other thing is I've got a whole stack here of other MDF buildings that have been in my stash for ages that I've not yet started, and so I might do some of those for camera, I might do some of those not on camera. MDF kits are all very much the same, and I don't really want to be having to film everything just for the habit of it. So I think probably what you're going to see now is I'm going to focus on me building these little kits, because they're going to be quite fun and easy, and then I will probably do a wrap up at the end of this, which will show how much of this I managed to get cracking through, because I'm feeling quite inspired, so I'm just going to do it. So we will assemble each of these very quickly, and then I'll show you how they look painted, and I'll tell you how I go about painting them. Some of them I won't need to worry about painting. For example, the church furniture and the school furniture probably doesn't even need to be painted, just sealed. Actually, probably most of it could get away without being painted, but it's quite nice. So I'll run the camera when I'm assembling them, but everything else you see here probably will just get made and will just appear, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Well, the theme that's been selected for the Paint All the Minis painting fun challenge this month is Monster. So I immediately thought of this, which I picked up when I was doing my little collaboration with Paint to Life. Really cool channel. If you haven't seen it, if you do not follow Mike, then go now. Don't even wait to the end of my video. Go and follow him. Go and give him a sub and watch his videos, and then come back, because you will not be disappointed. He is probably my favourite channel on YouTube. Really cool guy. Anyway, that's not by the by, but that's not what this is about. So I bought this when I was doing my collaboration, and I immediately thought of it. So I went over to get it out and found it straight away. And then I spotted this. Now, this was actually given me as a free gift. I ordered so much Reaper from a guy on YouTube, on eBay, that he just stuck this in the box as a thank you for the order. I probably spent a bit too much that time. But I think I'm going to do this one rather than that. I'm going to leave Axbeak, and I'm going to do Mumlak. So let's get him out of his box and we can have a look at him. So here he is, Mumlak. I think that is a monster. So I'm going to give him a wash first, and then you can see there are gaps. It's pre-assembled, which I don't really like, because most of the time people pre-assembling don't care about the miniature as much as I do. There are also some mould lines I'm going to need to clean up. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to get a bit of a wash on and fill in these gaps. The ear is particularly badly put in, and there's some gaps here around by the back of the neck. So that probably isn't so bad, because you can kind of say that's his hair, the gap that would be there, but this one by his arm is not good at all. So yeah, so I'm going to clean up and tidy up some of those mould lines and gaps, and then paint them up. Now, I probably won't do very much of this on the camera. Again, I'm not really one for doing many painting videos. I do a few. I really love them, but I don't, I don't want to do too many. They take a lot of time. So yeah, so you'll probably just see this going through the process. I might bring you along a couple of times and talk about it. But yeah, that's going to be my entry. I'm really pleased to have found it. I'm really pleased to be thinking about painting him up. It's really quite cool. Yeah, not doing it to win, obviously, because that's not the point, but at least I might actually get an entry in as well this month. So I've made a lot of MDF buildings this week. I've not done them on camera, mainly because it's a nice change just to not be building with the camera running. These are entirely Sarissa kits, and yeah, really pleased with how they're turning out. I was going to do the texture and then put the windows on, but I've just actually realised what I'm going to do is put the windows on, or the shutters on first, because then I can texture around them, and I think that'll look better. I'm about to use my MDF sealant to seal all of the shutters for all of these buildings, and then I will we'll glue them on, and then I will do the texturing will be done using grout mix. Inside, I will also be sealing the floors inside and the rooftops and all those sorts of things. So there's going to be a lot of sealing going on over the next this evening now, and then they will be stained with wood stain, because yeah, it's wood, so I'll stain it with wood stain. So yeah, really enjoying this project. It's there's a lot of MDF, but they're all going to look really good for good western terrain. But more than that, they'll also really work for Middle Earth. So for like a canned or that sort of the southern tribes, these will be really cool for that sort of terrain as well. So yeah, I do a lot of hobbying, which isn't on the camera. I just thought I'd show this now. I've also obviously got the church that I'm building at the moment, which is being painted, and that is actually being done on camera. But there's a whole load of going on around the same project that is not necessarily going to be appearing on the blog very much. But I think when I've finished this project, I will do a here's everything and and do a little bit of a show and tell there. But these won't be showing up very much on the channel. They're just going to get done. Well, there you are, and you can see this big pile of MDF kit next to me. Yesterday evening, I sat and I painted texture on all of them. This is grout texture,
and by the end of the evening I just wanted to put all of it on the fire. It's way too much of a large batch, so I won't be making a batch that size again. I've also made a few mistakes while I've been assembling it, been in such a rush, so I've put a couple of things in wrong, but I think it's going to turn out pretty good, yeah, I'm actually not that far off finishing now, hopefully, so and that will be, the motivation is that I'll feel really happy when it's done, but right now it's just too big a batch, and there's a lesson learned. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Lots of MDF, but there are little bits and pieces scattered in as well. I'm sad that I didn't manage to finish Girl Riding Bear. I really thought I was going to do that this week, but I'll try to get that finished next week. I'm finally ready to start assembling and putting all the parts for the Orbz diorama together, which is pretty exciting. I've next to finished off everything, just a couple of bottles left to finish painting, which is very nearly done. And in my painting, I've also got quite a good start on the horses for dragging the war wagon. So there's bits and pieces, as I've said a couple of times now in this vlog, going on that aren't part and aren't videoed. I do more hobbying than I show in the vlog, and they will all land on the channel. The Rahki Ahmbo and the doll Orbz diorama may go a little bit on the back burner now because for various reasons the campaign has been put back, so I'm not in such a rush to have it finished for the start, but yeah, that'll be a nice filler, I think. Anyway, enough rambling, enough ranting, and enough chattering. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. It's been a long one this week. Thank you for watching. If you got this far, really appreciate it. Do leave me a comment, let me know, and yeah, I always reply to every single one of them, and that really motivates me as well. The comments are what I love the most. So thank you so much for watching, and stay safe out there. Thoughts go to anyone impacted, even indirectly, by the horrors in Ukraine. It's just go beyond even belief, and yeah, please do stay healthy, stay safe, and stay well.